Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Kirby is in the house. Dr. Kirby is in the house. We have an update. Elvis has left the building. Thank you. Thank you very much.
way to begin our Monday, our week, to start off with education. So we'll call this meeting to order. Sometimes my computer likes to just flicker all the time.
I see that.
Yeah, it does. It has done that for a while. It tends to do it under Cami more than under anything else. But
that would make me crazy.
It would it?
Hey, Bart, could you look at your computer?
Well, that is not even what it usually is. I just want to know why this wireless isn't working, because it's not on.
It's only that program.
Well, it's kind of settled down now. I'll let you know when it. So we'll call this meeting to order, and we have informational items. We have the assistant superintendent report. We have the curriculum and instruction report. We have informational presentations about North Star accountability systems. We have some grant applications to look at, to just review. We have some action items to look at, just acceptance of grants. We have some diplomas to reward and celebrate. And that looks like our agenda tonight. We're glad everybody's here. Anybody need any housekeeping, anything that needs to happen? Nobody has to leave early. Nobody has to keep their phone on for emergency families. You always do, yeah. That's good. So we'll begin with the assistant superintendent's report.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. A couple things on my report tonight. First, just some site celebrations. We had homecoming last week at our sites, and saw lots of pictures and witnessed lots of school spirit, which was exciting. Lots of positive things going on there. So those are always just some of the most fun weeks during the school year. And I saw a lot of students and staff enjoying that, so that was really exciting to see. For school safety, we have numerous updates under school safety. The first one is the state safety grant. Two of our sites were awarded the state safety grant, and those sites were, we applied for all of our sites actually, up to $500,000 per site could be applied for. There was over $255 million ask from the state, from districts around the state, and obviously the $25 million allocated by the legislature was not enough to cover all that. So we were lucky enough to get two sites on that. Denfield and Rockridge were the two sites that were identified. If you recall, we've applied for a federal grant as well, which was the COPS grant, and that is hosted by the Duluth Police Department. And we took those grants and we tried to apply. We wrote them so they could work independently of each other, but also so they'd overlap. The hope was that we would get both, which would be great because then we would have all sorts of funds to do a lot of things. We did not get all of the state safety grant, and we do have some good security measures here in the district as well. And so, because we have those pieces in place already, that could have been one of the reasons why we didn't get some things. But nonetheless, when we heard from the community, there was still a need to do some improvements. So we were actually awarded this second grant, and it was in an amount of $468,000, which is very impressive. So we're very excited to get that, so that we can actually pair up with the state safety grant, and we'll be able to do some really great things for school safety with that. I have yet to get all the final details on that, so I can't speak to all the specifics, but that'll be more information to come. So we're really excited about that. In addition, we brought our safety team together recently, and we combined a couple different teams that were out there to really focus on safety. And one of the main charges of this group right now is the implementation of ALICE. And so we are going to be getting ready for our professional development day on October 29th. And this team is setting the groundwork for what we'll be doing on that day. And then also the long-range plan over the next year and a few years on what that implementation plan will look like, so we make sure we implement with fidelity. So there's a lot of great things happening around school safety. We have some great professional development coming up. We have some great teams working on this. And this team is made up of administrators, of teachers, it's made up of community members, and so we have a lot of people from different areas that have input. Our law enforcement agencies are on there, so really excited about the work coming with that. Equity work. So something that we're excited about too is our principal group, as I'd shared before, started a book called Courageous Conversations last year by Glenn Singleton. And one of the questions we asked is, how do we get this down into our building level, and what can we do with that? We're looking at an opportunity where we will be able to invite some of our school improvement teams to a training that will be led by Pacific Education Group, and they work directly with Glenn Singleton, the author of Courageous Conversations, and really working with them as we've reallocated our funds, our compensatory funds, to the school improvement teams to help make decisions with. We want to make sure that we give them training on how to actually go about making some of those decisions. There's the continuous improvement process, but also just equity work and how we should be making decisions, how we could make decisions, questions to ask. This reinforces the equity tool that we'll be using as well, and I'm currently in conversations with them on how we can blend all those pieces together. So we're going to be getting some really great training for our school improvement teams so they can take that back to their buildings, and then they can, that'll just enhance their ability to do the work that we've asked them to do.
Can I ask a question on that? Okay. On the Courageous Conversations piece, is that training coming from compensatory ed dollars, and is it site dollars or district dollars, or where is the fund for the trainings coming from?
Great question. William Howes and I started out with our budgets to say, what can we do to support this work? In years past, there was funds set aside for the school improvement teams to come together as a district team. Last year, we lost that funding, unfortunately, but we were able to look at our budgets and saying, what can we do within our budgets to make that work? We also write what's called a title plan, which is some professional development dollars, and within our title plan, which is tied to equity, we can use a few funds from there too. So it's a combination of some of those different pieces. So it's really it's a piecemeal. There's not one budget where we could say, yes, let's dedicate this. It's with looking at the North Star plan and the importance of equity work that we need to do. We said, how can we get some things down to the school level to support them?
There's one other piece was the principals' professional development funds.
Yep, and then our principals, I'm specifically, when I talk about our title schools, those are the schools that we're starting with. We don't have the funding to do this for everybody, unfortunately, so we're starting with our title schools, which is what those dollars are meant to be doing in that professional development grant. And so we also went to our principals and said, here's some work. This is what we want to do. What do you think? And the principals from our title schools said, yeah, we're interested in doing this, and even are using some of their own professional development funds because they see value in this and are excited for this opportunity.
Okay, so site, title dollars, as well as a couple of sort of administrative
Nope. So I have my budget, so that's one piece.
General.
Yep.
General fund.
And then William Howes has dollars that he has for his program, so that would be another piece.
Integration funding.
Yep. And then the other one would be rollover from title funds. So title funds have already been allocated to the sites, and so every year when they do the math and everything kind of comes through, sometimes there's some rollover dollars, and so there was some rollover. So there wasn't any funds taken from existing projects with that. These were some rollover dollars. We're like, hey, what if we pair this, and this together, maybe we can do a few things. And then principals have their budget as well to do that.
Okay, so this is starting with the title schools. It's the principals from the title schools that are involved in the.
That's correct. Yep.
Training.
With the exception of Lincoln Park, it's all of our elementary schools right now. Lincoln Park, we couldn't. It would have been a stretch. It would have been really hard to make that work. And if we have a future opportunity to do some things, it would be really great if they could go through that with their secondary sites. So that would be the place we'd rather have them.
So it's all elementaries, or is it elementaries in Denville?
Just elementaries right now.
Just elementaries.
Yep.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep.
I have an additional question. Knowing that, all of these pieces are coming together to pay for it, what is the total cost, knowing for these 5 people to go? Do you know?
Are you talking, I was referencing the professional development, which will be training 80 different people here on site.
I'm referencing to go to the conference.
The cost to go to the conference?
Yeah.
I'd have to go check on those numbers. I don't have them in front of me right now, but I'd be happy to get them to you later.
Okay. Do you have a guesstimate, like 1,000, or is it less than 5,000, more than 100?
I'd just be guessing, to be honest with you. So
all right, I would appreciate those numbers.
I can sure do that for sure. The next piece, we have a diversion meeting coming up. So tomorrow I'll be heading down with the team to go to the Minnesota Department of Human Rights diversion meeting. This is at the University of St. Thomas. So districts around the state who are partnering with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights will be coming together. I'm not exactly sure what that meeting is going to all look like, so I'll be excited to report back, but it was just more of an FYI. This is coming up, and this will be helping us support the work that we're doing in our district. Lastly, I have a shout out. So as I was passing by Lester Park Elementary School on what was probably the coldest day of the year this school year anyway, I think it was last Thursday, it was about 33 degrees outside. And I saw on the side of the road these bundled up students holding signs to stop traffic, helping our kids cross the road and our families get to school safely. And so I stopped and I met Ava Zenner and Lillian Zenner, as well as Brooklyn Bossart and Nora Crow, and each of them just had a huge smile on their face. They weren't out there. They were excited that they were there to keep people safe. They weren't complaining because it was cold very much. They were excited to be outside in Duluth. It was sunny that day, cold but sunny, and they were just having a blast out there. So I stopped and I met with them and talked to them a little bit more and just thanked them for all that they were doing, and was just really impressed. I mean, they were out there embracing their job, keeping our other families and students safe, and so I just wanted to give each of them a little shout out. And I did email their teachers and I asked their parents if it would be okay if I shared their names tonight, and they said absolutely it was. So, but it was just an amazing job. So I was very impressed by the 4 of those young ladies. So that is my shout out and that is my report.
Member Loeffler-Kemp.
Thank you for recognizing crossing guards. They do a great job. They have for years. I just had a question about the diversion meeting. Who's all going down there with you? You said you were going with the team.
Yep, I will be going down there along with Bernie from our DFT. Also included in there is Ron Lake and Edie Howes, and William Howes will be going as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Assistant Superintendent. I think that concludes. Just another shout out for crossing guards. Some of you have young people in our elementary, and wait until that invite comes to your students to be, to apply to be a crossing guard. I can remember just really anxious young person in my household when he applied for a crossing guard. He's now 40 years old and he's the father of that little baby I brought around, but he just wanted to be a crossing guard in the worst way, and so I wouldn't doubt that you got just smiles and just this, because it's a really neat responsibility at a great time in their lives to engage in responsibility. So thank you. Thanks for validating them. Well, now we're going to go on to our Director of Curriculum, Ms. Netland.
Thank you. So a couple of things on my report tonight for you. I'm going to start at the top with one that's the most time sensitive, and that is our October 29th Staff Development Day. Just to clarify, this day isn't for all staff in the district. It's just for people on teacher contract. So it's going to be focused at the site level and buildings led by principals. There will be some district components that principals will be implementing in their buildings. Half of the time will be focused on ALICE training and support. Jeff mentioned some planning for that, for what that's going to look like. So that's kind of a placeholder for half the day. The remainder of the day will be focused on de-escalation strategies. And then the bulk of that will also be focused on building-specific professional development efforts related to continuous improvement plans on a building-by-building basis. So what they're focusing on will vary based on the needs assessment they did as a team. Let's see, what else with that? We're still going to be doing a district exit ticket like we've done for other days, so we'll still have that kind of satisfaction data, and we'll be able to filter that by building, so principals will be able to take that back and use that for planning with their teams as well. Next up, course catalog and registration. So the course catalog process starts early for getting courses done, as you're probably well aware, and we've already had some meetings regarding that. The window was open for suggesting changes, and that just closed on Friday. So we're working on gathering that data up and then looking at what types of changes need to be made to get ready for recommendations. Curriculum, arts adoption. I had a couple of others on here last time, and I'm just trying to highlight some of the different stages that we're in every month. So arts adoption, we're at the beginning stages of that one for this year. As we mentioned before, there were new standards that came out this summer as a kind of a finalized draft. And so this one is a little bit unique in that arts has expanded to have standards at every grade level, not just grade level bands. And there's also 4 different areas of art involved, including dance, music, and then visual and media arts. So lots of different components spanning really different departments for content. So this one is bigger than it might seem at first glance. So we're really excited to be working on getting started with that. Other things, just there's ongoing implementation for our balanced literacy materials for K-5, which is Wonders, having ongoing support for teachers with that. And then working on starting some initial planning meetings for the ELA secondary text selection that was happening last year. So I've met with teachers a few times, and then I've got a meeting with the invited community member reps starting next week to do kind of introduction to the process and what it's going to look like this year. And then I'm just working on continuing building relationships with one-on-one meetings. I'm still finding people that I didn't know were there to have meetings with, doing that type of building relationship and connecting, and really enjoying getting to know all of the neat people that are doing good work. So that is my report.
Member Oswald?
Thank you. With the arts adoption, do you see our curriculum needing to change in any way to help meet the standards, such as the amount of time we get our instruction in the elementary level, or more requirements at the high school level?
That is a complicated conversation. There are a lot of standards with this new adoption, and again, at every grade level. And so there's a team currently pulling together to take a look at what type of changes need to be made. My art specialists are doing that. And so they're just at the very beginning stages where we've got meetings scheduled for this month. So that's kind of a wait and see.
And so when does this have to be implemented by? Is it for next year or this year?
Not this year, no.
Okay.
No, this is moving forward. So the goal for this year is to identify recommendations.
Member Sandstead?
Yeah, I had a question about the course catalog. You talked about the process that we're looking at in terms of changes, and I just wonder if you could talk about who we is in that process.
Yeah, there's several different groups. So one of the groups is all of the counselors, because they're kind of the boots on the ground people that handle interacting with the students and the parents, trying to get those things set. Another group is principals. It impacts their buildings directly. Others are department chairs, depending on the grade level, and then also our curriculum specialists. So kind of curriculum specialists, so content area focused people.
Member Trinka?
Yeah, thank you. For the changes to the secondary literature pieces, can you talk about who's involved, who the invited community members are, and if we're using the equity tool as a part for determining what the replacement curriculum will be?
So I actually use the equity tool to help develop and refine the process from the start, and then that's going to be a consideration as we move forward as well for that piece, absolutely. And then as far as who the groups are, I'll have to get back to you. I've got a list, but because the list was created before I got here, I haven't even met all of the people. So part of that is I've got a list of them that are invited, and I'm going to be meeting them for the first time next week. So I can give that to you.
So I have a question too. If the catalog changes were due last Friday, does that mean that really anything that comes up as a potential curriculum offering or not offering in our catalog for next year couldn't be considered? It just seems so early. My background in teaching, I think it seems so early that Friday was a cutoff for internally counselors, principals,
Yep.
Department heads to think about what's good, what should be in next year's catalog, and what's not going to be. And even with the new art standard, we wouldn't see some possible changes in our offerings for that.
Sure, I can speak to that. So I actually extended the deadline this year later than what it was previously. It's a process that starts kind of the year before. And so at this point, there's small changes. I just glanced at the list before I came, and it was small things like updating a description, changing a course title. There's a lot more multi-year level work that goes in if we're adding courses or that type of thing, because there are a lot of funding implications, planning pieces, gathering equipment. So this is just an initial screening piece to figure out what types of changes we're looking at.
And then my last question is about this staff development day on October 29th. What's on the agenda looks incredibly wonderful and beneficial, and I just wonder when our paras or our support staff would get this extended training. I know that some of them already have extended training in de-escalation strategies just due to their job, but where are we going to do that kind of work with our paras and our support staff that aren't working on that day? I would take it that that's not a day for them.
Correct. Yeah, so, and I'm going to look to Jason a little bit for this, but for de-escalation strategies, our paras and then our special education teachers have extensive training in this. And then this piece is like a 60-minute condensed version. The desire, and I might ask Bill to speak on this, the desire, I believe, came from a collaboration of district leadership looking for the need to make sure that this education and skills were available to all teachers, and so that's why it's included on that day. As far as the ALICE piece, we're going to have to figure that out as part of the planning for implementation, because that is a barrier for this day, and they do need that training. Did you want to say anything else?
No, you're right on.
Okay.
So is there an opportunity to record that hour-long presentation and make it available to people that may just want to watch it?
As far as the de-escalation?
Yes.
That seems like a great idea. We have a district-developed PowerPoint already with some kind of teaching tools within that, but that seems like a reasonable idea.
I mean, I know that paras, or any district staff could, I'm thinking of substitutes that could use this de-escalation because they're challenged constantly. Just to have some strategies in their back pocket and stuff like that, just to have something available for them, even though we don't pay them to watch it. Me as a sub, I'd watch it just for fun, just because it's one more thing to learn.
Yeah, I can definitely follow up on that and see what's possible.
That's okay. A couple questions. In terms of the de-escalation training, do you know, or Jason, how much training that paras do receive on that in terms of like hours? I'm curious with that.
So special education employees receive a comprehensive full training, and they also receive every 2 years a refresher course in that as well. This fall, non-certified staff were a part of our first full-day training, and then they also got 3 hours of special training on the second day that was called What's the Function of the Behavior, which is an extension of the nonviolent de-escalation training. So they've had considerable training this fall. Everyone could still use more.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. And then my second question had to do with the catalog. Maybe it would be helpful if we could get a timeline. I know as a parent kind of when the catalog comes out and spins out at that end, but of just kind of the steps to the course catalog and when it goes to the students or goes to the school and then to the students and it's opened up. That might be kind of helpful in understanding the process.
Kind of the overall process timeline?
Sure.
So I'm just kind of, so that concludes your report?
Yes.
Or no,
Oh.
you had one.
I was just going to say there's a document that exists that has that timeline, so I just didn't want to forget to tell you.
Okay, so now we're on to the part of our education committee that is our North Star presentation. And I know that we got a document from Assistant Superintendent right this afternoon. Did it load up onto our board book?
It is on board book right now, yes. So you can pull up on board book, and I also have it on the TV over there for you as well. So Dr. Lake did an awesome job last meeting of sharing what North Star is and some of the data that goes along with it. I'm going to just do a quick recap because it has been a month, so I just wanted to share a brief recap of kind of what some of those different pieces are. And then we're going to move into some of our site data, but more specifically the site goals that the site team, the continuous improvement teams developed. So, and I'm struggling to click forward on my screen here. Bart, I'm frozen. Any thoughts? Maybe get out of there for a second and go back in. I can do that now, but now I lost it up there.
So let's try to go back to the cast. Try casting your whole screen. If we go, let's go click on cast there.
Mm-hmm.
Cast desktop. And see if that makes a difference.
Okay. Sure. Because it worked earlier. Can we do full screen now?
Yeah, you should probably do full screen.
How do you do that?
So it is going through the presentation now, right? You just
Yeah.
want to figure out to do full screen.
Before it had, well, we can just leave it like that. Because I've got that up there now. Cast tab. That's what I should have, is cast tab. There we go. Now it's working. Okay, sorry about that. It worked when we tested it earlier, and for some reason it was not working there. So, North Star presentation part 2. So, first of all, just a quick review. What is the North Star plan? The North Star plan is ESSA. ESSA was developed over the last few years. It is the revamp of No Child Left Behind, and is now called the North Star Plan. So that North Star Plan is taking the word of ESSA away. It focuses on academic achievement, progress towards English language proficiency, academic progress. So there's that growth piece in there. Graduation rates and consistent attendance. So there's some new indicators that have shown up under the North Star Plan that were not present under No Child Left Behind. Another key piece that we pay attention to is our world's best workforce, which we have a district plan for. This ensures that all children are ready for school and that all third graders can read at grade level. Racial and economic achievement gaps between students are closed. All students are ready for a career in college, and that all students graduate from high school. So we see some overlapping within the plans, and I think we'll probably see some things as we go forward grow more and more together with that. So what is the record of continuous improvement for suspensions? This is the agreement, part of the agreement we entered in with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, and so from that we developed a record of continuous improvement to focus on suspensions. And so we developed that plan, we shared that plan with them, and they approved that plan, And so we're continuing to work through that plan right now, and the diversion meeting that we're going to is a piece of that. This supports our World's Best Workforce Plan, and it outlines strategies that we're using to decrease suspensions among different groups. This is part of our continuous improvement process as well. At our site level, they develop records of continuous improvement, and they focus within these areas. So they have a framework, they have a template that they work with, and they sit down with their continuous improvement teams and they say, okay, where do we need to set some goals? And so this document helps them do that. Kindergarten readiness is in there, grade 3 reading proficiency, high achievement for all student groups, college and career readiness, increased graduation rates, and disproportionality. We originally developed this document before the North Star Plan was released, so we'll be continuing to look at and make sure that work all aligns as we continue to learn more about that. But that was the framework that our team was given for this year. And we've also included attendance, and you'll see that in some of the RCI plan goals that we will have later on. Why do we follow a continuous improvement process? Again, this follows implementation science. We know that this is an effective way to make decisions and to go about analyzing data and allocating our resources and working through our different initiatives. This process is supported by the Regional Centers of Excellence and the Minnesota Department of Education, and we're excited about that. In fact, when the Regional Center of Excellence comes to our school district to say, we're offering you comprehensive support, that's actually what they're teaching, is that continuous improvement process. So our sites really are, every site in our district really is getting targeted support from even before North Star came out. So it's really exciting that when we have them to come in to partner with to further our work in that, but we're already on the path that they would be taking us, which is really exciting. So we know this is an effective approach, and it's recognized statewide and nationwide as well. Dr. Lake does a wonderful job of putting data together for our teams and for our building leaders. So this is just a sample chart of something that she might hand out to a group. And so here you see some of our schools listed on the left side, and then she would have trend data that goes across, and this would look at reading for English learners. She has multiple graphs and data tables like this for the different demographic groups and broken down different ways. So it really is helpful for our building leaders as she shows them how to use these and then bring them to their continuous improvement teams to look through the data. Because we have a lot of data in a school district. We're not short on data, so really making sense of it is really important and be able to do that, use that effectively in a meeting. And so Dr. Lake does that. And here's just a quick sample chart for you so you have a sense of what our continuous improvement teams might be looking at during their meeting. So the next part of the presentation is going to really look at our sites. As I showed you on the previous chart, this is just for English learners in reading. Imagine having that for math for that group, and then also for our special education, and then for each other demographic group as we break them down for reduced lunch, for all the different areas and demographics. So it's a lot of information, and our team spend a lot of time going through that data. So I've just focused on the goal areas where they've decided where they want to focus in on. So they've gone through the process of analyzing that data with their teams, and our district has come in and supported them when they needed that to help them identify where your key areas, where you want to set your goals. So the first group is Congdon Park, and their goal areas are kindergarten readiness. And you can see I did put a baseline in there, so they're looking to move from 60% to 80% in that area. Their reading goal. Congdon, when I talked with Principal Cush Marshall, she said that, we really want to focus on some of the positives as well, and we want to reference those. So I did include there. That is the percent that they'll actually be aiming for. They looked over 7 years, how much do we need to grow in order to meet the goal of the North Star Plan, and it's about 0.685% per year. So she's excited that they're already achieving at a high level, but that doesn't mean there's still not room to improve. So that's why you see some of those low numbers. That is a 0.685%. For math, they're looking at 1.34. So while there are those positive areas that she's really excited about, there's also some areas that they really want to dig into and focus and work on. and they identified free and reduced lunch and special education for both math and reading. And so they're looking at about a 4 to 5% gain for this school year in each of those areas. With the exception of reading, we have a little bit further to go in special education. That's 7.38%. And so that is what their site will be focused on for this school year. That's where they've, based on their review of data and analysis, this is where they see need to grow and have set their sights for the year. Homecroft. So I've gone through, the first it'll be all elementaries, and we'll get to secondaries after that. So kindergarten readiness goal. So they're looking to go from 38.3% to 43%. So that is one of their goals. They're also looking to increase their reading proficiency. Currently, they are at 67.8%, and they're going to look to move the needle to 70.97 this school year. And then for their achievement gap, they're going to be looking at moving all student groups. So they're taking, under North Star, we have to look at every group. So we're looking for 85, we want to get to 90% with no groups below 85%. So really, we can't just say we're going to necessarily focus here or there. So some of our teams have said, hey, you know what, we're going to focus on all the different groups, and we're going to look at moving the needle for everybody. To articulate that in a simple way, they've said that we're going to move all student groups from here to there. Now, within their working documents, they have sub-goals and benchmarks to say for each group and demographic group that this is how we're kind of tracking that progress. But for like a broad goal, this is what that might look like. And then the rest would be under like benchmark type data. Lakewood is looking to move their kindergarten readiness up to 60%. They have their preliminary data for their baseline, but they still have a couple pieces that are still out there yet. So, but based on what they know, they're looking at 60%, but they don't have a solid baseline. That number could still move a little bit, so that's why it's not included there. Third grade reading proficiency goal, they're looking to move from 73.9 to 76%. And they too are focusing on free and reduced lunch students for reading and special education students for math. In both areas, they're currently at 64.3%, and they're looking to grow that by about 3 percentage points for this school year. Lower Mac, they're focusing on third grade reading proficiency, and you'll notice that not everybody has the same goal areas. Based on their data, they have chosen what their goals should be. So what makes sense for one school may not make sense for the other. So they have the flexibility to choose which goals that they want to have to a degree. If they are below, if they are an identified school by the state, if they are receiving comprehensive support, they might have more parameters in terms of where their goals need to be depending on where they're identified. But you know, most schools do have some flexibility in that, so you see this is a little bit different. We don't have a kindergarten readiness goal, but we do have third grade reading goal. And so they're looking to increase their proficiency rate from 44.6 to 51%. Under achievement gap, they're looking to focus on all students again, so you see that all students indicator. And they're looking to do about a 6-point increase for reading, and they're looking to do about a 5-point increase in math. Schools where we're noticing disproportionate amounts of suspensions, we talked about that as a team and determined that it would be really good for those sites to have a disproportionality goal. And so they have some disproportionate suspension there, and so they're focusing to reduce on the Black African American suspension days and reducing that by from 30.26% down to 27.51% of their suspensions. Lister Park focused on a reading goal, so they have a school-wide reading goal moving from 86.8 to 87.3%, and increase from 81% to 82.2% in the area of math. And they have also identified some achievement gap goals, again focusing on free and reduced lunch and special education.
Member Trinket.
I have a question actually about the Laura MacArthur slide that I think probably ties into all these. So just quickly, if you can remind us, the disproportionality goals, how are those set?
How are those set? So what we'd be looking at is the percentage of, if you have disproportionate amounts of suspension, it would say that we are suspending Black African American students at a higher rate than other demographic groups. So we take a look at that data and we say, okay, we want to reduce that number to make that more in line. So our suspensions should look more uniform across different demographic groups. And so we shouldn't see higher rates with special education and lower with white students, for example. So we should be seeing more even numbers across the board in terms of the number of suspensions based on the percentage of students in a demographic group.
So can I, this is probably not an effective correlation. So 27.51%, that's the average for suspensions across the district, and we're trying to bring it in line?
Nope, this is at their site. So this is just their site data that they're trying to bring this in line to. So based on their demographics, they're trying to bring within their own demographic suspensions that to be even across all groups.
So 27% is the suspension rate across all groups at Laura MacArthur? I'm missing something here, I think, in the explanation. I apologize.
Can I think, so it's of the total number, 100% of kids who are suspended, reducing the proportion of that is Black or African American students.
To 27%.
Yes.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. And then just to clarify too, the when you talk about suspension, is that in school and out of school, or is that a combination of both?
Good question. This is focused on out of school suspensions.
Okay.
Yep.
It might be helpful to just update that on the slides, especially if it's public, so people are clear, especially since out of school suspension is a goal of ours.
Yep. You can definitely do that.
Okay. And then do we have an idea of the last question, I promise, the percentage of the goals for disproportionality that's in the North Star plan, right? For the suspensions, out-of-school suspensions for students on free and reduced lunch and students of color. Those goals that's public information, right? What it is for all the students, for all the schools, excuse me.
Is DERS
It depends on the cell size. So if it's fewer than 10 students, then it's private data because students could be identified.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so in the majority of our sites, the cell size is too small to be shared. So we share that out in percentages rather than student numbers.
Sure.
But for most of our sites, it's a smaller number. So those are discussed as teams, but not public data.
Information. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And there are some in here when I was going through data, like in their working documents, they'll have specific numbers, but I didn't put those in the presentations. So just because of that exact reason right there. So.
I'd like to echo off of Member Trinka's comments about the disproportionality goal at MacArthur, and speaking to all disproportionality goals. I find it a bit disturbing that we're saying that it's acceptable that 27% of our out-of-school suspensions are going to be people of color. I think we should have a goal of as close to zero as possible for everyone. But that's neither here nor there in measurality, being able to measure it. But I do want to know, knowing that there's the Northwoods program at MacArthur, and knowing that there's a significant number of students of color experiencing trauma and in situations that are not of the norm, how much that contributes to the out-of-school suspension rate.
Yeah, I think we would all like to see those even. I would echo that as well. In terms of setting the goals, when you set a SMART goals, one of the things is that we have to understand what we can actually accomplish. And so this is a staggered approach. So the next goal, once we hit 27%, then the next goal would be, okay, now we're going to get to 24. And so the North Star plan is set up. It's a 7-year plan. And so just like with the academics, we have time to try to do that. Doesn't mean we want to go faster. We're going to try. But this is where the way we kind of do this, we divide it out and we set our targets that way. But agreed that we would very much like to get there today.
Well, I hope it's a total of 4 kids that are suspended, and one of them was an African American or a Native American student, because then that would be a quarter.
I just wanted to talk about the second part of your question. We recognize that culture plays a role in behaviors and in interactions, and suspensions and just how we operate as a school. And if it's been a while since we looked at the plan for the record of improvement, but it does include professional development in the area of culture and climate. Our Courageous Conversations is an important piece of that work that we're doing with our principals and with our staff, and understanding how culture plays out in our classroom and how we each bring culture into the classroom ourselves, and how that interacts with all of everyone else's cultures. And so being able to have conversations about race and racism in our schools, and understanding how systemic racism plays a role in all of this is an important piece of this work as well. And it's a multi-year plan, and so this isn't our final goal, but it's our goal for this year.
Lester Park, I did cover this slide. Unless there's a question about this one in particular, I can move on. I'm doing my 7-second wait time. All right, Lowell Elementary School. They chose to focus on third grade reading proficiency, and so they're looking to increase from 60.7 to 64.9. And then for their achievement gap goal, they're looking, again, focusing on all students, will increase from 68.5 to 71.57 in reading, and from 75.3 to 77.4 in math. Myers-Wilkins. So Myers-Wilkins Kindergarten Readiness Goal. So they saw that they were at 19% in this area, and their goal is to move to 30%. Third grade reading proficiency, they're looking to move about 7 points from 34.3 to 41.3%. In the area of achievement gaps, they're focusing on Black African American student group and looking to increase theirs from 17.1% to 27.1% in reading. And then they're focusing on special education student group from 14.3 to 24.3% in math. In the area of disproportionality, they're looking to reduce Black African American suspensions by 20% for this school year.
Can you remind us what the current rate is for their out-of-school suspensions for Black and African American students? If they're looking to reduce it by 20%, what's the baseline?
I would need to pull it up. And you know what? I was going to do it on my computer, and now that I'm casting, I can't.
That's okay.
Think. Hang on, let me see what happens up there. Nope. Oh, wait, hang on. Give me. I do have the exact number of suspensions. You're looking for, so please ask your question again, so I make sure I give you the right information.
So if we're looking to reduce it by 20%, what's it at now?
So you're looking for an actual number.
A percentage?
It wouldn't be a percent. It's 20% of the total, incidents. So there's 100 suspensions. So if it's a 20% decrease, it'd be a decrease of 20. So does that make sense?
From what percentage? What's the percentage of out-of-school suspensions for African American students at Myers-Wilkins right now?
Versus all students? Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
Okay, they're saying they're just saying that there was 100 suspensions for Black students, and they want to reduce it to 80. So it'd be a 20% reduction. They're not measuring this against the whole.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
I do want to just say one thing about that, though, and you and I have talked about this privately, and I appreciate your interest in data as much as mine is, to be able to look at things so we know when we're thinking about 20%, we're thinking of 20 of 100, because we're just thinking about different percentages and numbers for each different school differently. So I know it's something that you're working on and you're excited about, and I just want to continue to encourage you to do that, so that when we're talking about data, we're talking about the same thing all the time.
Yep, I agree. I think that as we look to next school year, I think we can definitely take a look at that for sure.
So just can I import something about data too, is that when we look at numbers, it's not always the number of students, it's the number of incidences of suspension.
Yep, so there's duplicated and unduplicated data, and so knowing when we're talking about duplicated and unduplicated, and if we're talking about both or one, that's also very important, I agree. All right, Piedmont, third grade reading proficiency goal. So they're looking to move the needle from 48.7 to 52% this school year, and they are focusing on American Indian student groups for their achievement gap goal in the area of reading, and to move that from 16.7% to 29.7%. In special education, they're looking to have an increase from 8.4% to 29.4%. And I know the principal is very dedicated to this work, and she has seen her numbers, and she has assured me that those are going to be high priority areas for her, and she's really looking to make some great gains there this school year. In addition, they have all student goal where they're looking to move the needle about 3 points in the area of reading, and yeah, they were going to stay flat. That is my fault. We read over that and we missed that. Let me give you that information right now. I apologize for that. There we go, 53.7. I apologize. It's supposed to be a 3-point, and we'll make sure that we make that adjustment on that. So we'll update that right away here. So, but that should be a 50 to 53.7 change. Stowe Elementary, so kindergarten readiness goal, they're looking to move from 59 to 60% in that area, and from 52.2 to 65%. Under achievement gap, they're looking to go from 14.2% to 45% in reading, so they've set some aggressive goals. And in the area of math, they're looking to go from 28.5 to 45%. And for their disproportionality goal, they're looking to reduce suspensions by 50% for Black African American students in that group.
Member Oswald.
Thank you. The kindergarten readiness goal moving only 1%. Could you have an explanation for that? That it just doesn't seem like they're focused or trying. But I mean, maybe that's just what's attainable. I don't know. And what are the measures for a kindergarten readiness goal?
And this is kind of what I thought it was actually. It's actually the 80% that they're going to. I apologize again. I'm not sure why that happened, but when I was copying and pasting them in, I must have made a mistake there. So, but that would be 80%.
So 59% to 80%?
Yeah, and we'll get that updated right too. Again, I apologize about that.
And so then the second part of my question was, what encompasses a kindergarten readiness goal?
They use the FAST system.
Can I follow up on that?
Member Sandstead.
Yeah. Say more about kindergarten readiness. I've got a kindergarten now.
Sure.
Kindergartner again this year. Where are they determining whether or not he's ready, and when does that happen, and what are they using?
Yep. I think Dr. Lake who's probably the best person. Could you help with that in terms of the kindergarten readiness question? Thank you.
And do we test all students on this?
We do. Yeah, we test all students in grades K through 5. We do screening the first month of school using FastBridge assessments. And we worked with the pre-K 3 committee to talk about what we might use as a measure. We know that kindergarten readiness is much more broad and much more whole child than just literacy or pre-literacy skills. But in terms of what we already have for assessments, that's what we landed on, was those pre-reading skills that they would come to school with. So there are a variety of different tasks that they're asked to do one-on-one with a teacher.
Okay. And do we have statistics on kids who attend our early childhood programs and their kindergarten readiness compared to the general population?
Not yet. We haven't found a really good way to identify those students in our system to very easily pull the data to then make comparisons, but that's definitely something that we want to work towards.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks.
Assistant Superintendent, can you help me with a definition or what determines suspension at our buildings? Is that should I ask that more privately, or?
Nope, you can ask. A suspension could happen for a variety of reasons. Our principals have a matrix in which they can make decisions from, and so based on a student behavior, there's a range of options that may be appropriate. And so, in being an administrator, there's also an art to it as well, where you in assessing the situation and determining, what is something that we can do, and is it something that's restorative? Is it something that calls for suspension? Is it something where we can coach people through? So, and so if behavior crosses a certain threshold, or if it's repetitive, or depending on what it is, then they may say that we need to do a suspension, and then there's guidance for that on how many days that should be as well.
Superintendent?
If I could expand on that a bit, I do want to point out that these goals are really talking about disorderly and disruptive behaviors that can be more subjective. There are behaviors that we are required to use suspension. If there are drugs or alcohol or acts of violence involved, those are behaviors that would lead to suspension. We are really trying to focus on the more subjective areas and reduce suspension in those. While we would love to reduce other types of behaviors, sometimes those are not within our control.
And so my follow-up would be then, just for our general information, is that when our schools make incredibly great goals, they have a plan. They know that it's going to take courageous conversation, professional development. They know that it's going to take, using climate and de-escalation skill, So, yeah, I got it now. Okay.
Yep. All right, off to our middle school. So at Lincoln Park, in the area of reading, they're looking to they're really at a school-wide goal of moving from 23 to 50%. And then they broke it down for each grade. So for 6th grade, they're looking to move from 21 to 50%. So grade 7, 27 to 50. In grade 8, they're looking for 35 to 50 in the area of reading. Very similar in the area of mathematics, moving from 22 to 50% school-wide, with a 17% to 50% area of growth for grade 6, 16 to 50% in grade 7, and 40 to 50% in grade 8. For disproportionality, they too, like SOAR, are looking to decrease by 50%, and so then they broke it out by subgroups and the percentage that they would like to see decrease for those. Whoops, excuse me, bumped the button there. And as I'd mentioned, some people chose to focus on attendance goals. So if we're seeing high rates of truancy at some of our sites, that they have said that attendance is a priority, and that is identified under North Star. And so some sites like Lincoln have identified an attendance goal. And so for students who are unexcused 7 or more times, they're looking to decrease that from 48% to 25%. And then when they break down their subgroups, they're...
Is it 48% of all students are truant at Lincoln Park?
Let me go pull that. I would have to pull that document up here.
Will what, though?
Each record of continuous improvement is 10 to sometimes close to 20 pages long, so bear with me for 1 second so I can get to the right piece of that. So out of 660 students, so what they did the math, so they took 315 divided by 660, and that means students truant were 48%. So, yep. So 315 students had 7 or more unexcused absences. Unexcused.
Could you explain? There's a way that you collect attendance in our schools, and it's by hour. So sometimes the percentages would be skewed. It might mean that one student is responsible for more than just 1%.
This would be unduplicated data in this situation. This one would be individual students, but what you might be referencing is period attendance. At the secondary level, we take period attendance. So if you miss a single hour, if you skip, if you don't like music class, for a random example, and you skip that 7 times, but you go to every other class, one period counts as a mark against you. So 7 periods that you skipped, even if it's that same class, would count as 7. At the elementary level, it's a little different, where they don't look at, you don't have periods, and so they take attendance differently, and so it'd be different for that. But for secondary, which would be this one, they're looking at periods. So
when do we contact parents, and when do we report to the county?
3, 7, and 10 is kind of the game that you play. So 3, you get a letter saying you are you've had 3 periods of unexcused, and that this is kind of a warning for you. At 7, the ante comes up. Usually there's a meeting that'll take place, and then at 10, the county tends to get involved. It can vary a little bit, but each county has their own individual rules on that, but statewide it's pretty consistent at 3, 7, and 10. And then even when you hit 15 for excused and unexcused combined, that's kind of another trigger that is often used to identify symptoms, because sometimes you'll get a student who's excused all the time, but they're still never in school. So usually around 15 is when that gets flagged, when it's a combination.
So half of the students were absent for 7 or more unexcused absences, whether it's 1 period per out of a day or all 7. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that 50% of families got a letter saying your child is truant from us last year?
I would have to look to see if that many families did get a letter, but they probably should have, yeah.
Do you have any idea how many were reported to the county out of that 50%?
I will have to check, and it gets tricky when you start involving the county sometimes. Sometimes there's usually discussion. SARB meets, which is a group that meets so you're familiar with that group. Sometimes it depends on the student, it depends on the age. So in middle school, you'll see a lot more action there when students get to be 16, 17, 18.
I'm just kind of thinking, just big numbers wise, what percentage of our Lincoln Park Middle School kids are ending up referred for? I have received some information from them for this year, for the month of September. I would have to go back and dig to see what happened last school year. I don't know. This is alarming numbers to me, and so it's something I would like to know more about in the future.
We do have some significant areas for attendance, and unfortunately, in the North Star, in the way that they do it, attendance is kind of the third thing. So as Dr. Lake kind of went through and said, here's the first indicators, step 1, and then here's kind of step 2 and 3 as they kind of identify you. That attendance is last, and sometimes we feel that you have to come to school to achieve all the other things, and kind of wonder why sometimes that's not first. But yeah, and so that's something that there was a focus last year, I know, in reading the handbook and reviewing some of our documents, that attendance was a focus, and it will be continuing to be, and has made it into our records of continuing improvement as well.
Member Oswald?
Is this counting the number of days that they're absent? Because I know there's a difference in stats when you count incidents of absence, meaning, you get strep throat and you're gone for 3 days, and that would be one incidence, but if you're counting days, that would count as 3 days. And I have had these discussions with a couple principals who have tended to look at that before they send out letters, because I was one of those parents that got a letter after my daughter was sick with strep throat for 2 straight weeks, and even though she was excused, and I got a letter and I was horrified. Yeah. And I said, but this was like 2 incidents, and then that changed the way the principal looked at that, and drastically improved the sentiment from parents feeling attacked from those letters, because they are not a friendly notice, obviously, especially for parents that are working and struggling and that kind of thing. Right. So is there a way to differentiate? Is this just strictly by day?
This would be based on a period. So for someone to be unexcused, it could be a period or it could be a full day, and it counts the same at the secondary level. But you're right, so that's kind of the piece where the administrator kind of digs in deeper. A lot of times, it's an automatic flag when you hit a number and you get the letter, but the whole goal, and even with involving the county, it's about partnership, it's about working with families, and that's really what the county tries to help do, is to educate families on the importance of coming to school, and how can we support the student, what barriers are there, and what supports do we need to put in place to help the students get to school. So, and in some cases, you're right, it's there's a major illness that happens or something significant in life for a child, and that can play a role in it too. So, but those are just kind of general indicators that are used.
Member Loeffler-Kemp.
I'm going to suggest maybe being there's a lot of interest in the whole concept of truancy and the impacts at different sites, that we have a longer presentation so we can get through this. And maybe bring in some of our truancy action staff, and just to share some of the things they're doing, and kind of have a bigger discussion around truancy and attendance, maybe at next month's meeting.
We can definitely bring that to agenda setting.
And again, just my last comment, when we look at data, and I'm not an expert, but I've been in the high school, and I kind of have been in meetings where we talk about it. 48% could be, it's still a high number, it's still concerning. I think that's why the North Star Plan has attendance as part of a measurable goal, but it's not over half, it's not almost half the students. There could, right? There could be, 48% could be generated by 1/4 of the student body.
Not in this number, no.
Not this number,
this
okay.
is. Now, I will say, though, when you talk about this excused versus unexcused, there are families that are more likely to call in and excuse versus families that will not do that. And so that is a piece of this, too. So when you take a look at that number, while I think we definitely identify there's a problem and they have said we need to fix this, there's also getting parents to actually write a note or call in, or to get that, to follow that system and that process. And that sometimes is another piece in the puzzle that our administrators uncover. So. All right. Ordine. So Ordine has 2 goals, and they've chosen to focus really on that broad goal again. Because they have some small cell size, as Superintendent Gronseth pointed out, in looking at their data, they thought it made most amount of sense for their school to focus on all students, all student groups, and so on their chart, they had kind of set different targets for each group. And some of those percentage points were, 1% with some of the groups because of where their current achievement is, and then for some groups that were very small cell sizes, they were a bit larger, but they're really trying to focus on all of the different groups, and that's something that North Star is asking us to try to pay attention to too, and they felt that they could take that on. So in the area of reading, they're basically looking at that 7-year plan. They said, here's the much growth we need from here until then. And then they said, here's the annual growth that we'll need to see, and that's how they set their targets in reading. And also in the area of math, they set those goals exactly the same way. Denfeld. So Denfeld set a reading goal. So they have a school-wide reading goal to increase from 46.7 to 52.9%. And then in the area of achievement, they decided to break that down in reading to look at these different groups, and this is the growth that they have determined that they need to focus on for the year. In the area of graduation, they said that they would increase from 80.3 to 82%, and they also have a disproportionality goal, and they're looking to decrease their overall suspensions by 25%.
Knowing Denfeld's concern about students arriving truantly because they have to walk to school and wanting busing within the 2-mile radius and those different discussions that have happened, do you know why they choose not to put an attendance goal on here?
That is definitely a question that I can follow up and ask. I have not asked that specific question. I do know that there's a lot of goals, and we're kind of working through that with North Star, because you could have 11 different goals for reading based on the demographic background. You could have 11 different goals for math. It's a little overwhelming, and so we've tried to give some guidance to say we're going to figure this out over the course of this next year, but go ahead and choose and pick within what is an appropriate amount of goals for your team. I do know they're working with the Regional Center of Excellence, and so they have helped them pare down into what they feel would be some really good goals. But I can follow up and ask that question.
I think it would be a really important key into supporting their cause that they really want, but also knowing that they are have been identified under the North Star system for this comprehensive help. I think it's something to watch, and so I would really appreciate knowing what that figure is and why it's not included, because I would really like busing to happen because they want it, but they don't provide us evidence, and I don't think that they think about that when knowing that we see this stuff and connect the two, so it might not have they might not have thought about it.
This isn't so much as a question, but I physically feel ill looking at these numbers when we have a 24% goal for reading for African American students at Denfeld and 85% at East. And I don't know how we collectively, because we're responsible for this as well, I don't know how we sit with that. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not an education expert. I know that part of it is that we have erroneous data, and I know that there's a lot of opportunities to clean up the data because there's double counting and there's all sorts of issues associated with that. But I don't know what else to do. Like, we got to figure out a way to put some more energy and some resources into this and talk about this in a way that's constructive, and talk about it in ways that are really honest, including systematic racism. But these numbers are just really disturbing, and our sons and daughters are going into these schools and something isn't working, and so and it's not for lack of effort on the part of teachers or administrators, but something's really got to give here because these numbers are really scary. And how do we say to a kid, like, you have a 24% chance of knowing how to read by the time you leave, to read at level by the time you graduate from high school?
So I want to echo your concern and your care. And I'm glad you added that you know that we have great teachers. I've worked in this end of town for my whole career. I grew up there too. And it's more than just numbers. Again, I think sometimes when our staff puts together the reports for us, they're anxious about it because these numbers don't show the growth and they don't show the effort. I think next month we're looking to bring, I know that Check and Connect is coming to share their presentation. They've seen great success at the high school level with increasing those percentages. But again, percentages don't tell you the story. And I know that it's hard to see the numbers, but if you could see the progress and the growth and the excitement that students do have when they are moving up, and we have reading labs in our high schools and middle schools and math labs that are low in number, and they're systematically attacking. And it's and we've talked about it as well. It's a full community school, and we're bringing that into some of our communities. And so I think we have to admit that the data, at least in my mind, is reflective of things that might not have been in place in pre-K and in kindergarten readiness. And we're making progress. And it's just, if you could be in our schools as often as our staff is, I think you would be bolstered a little bit more than what the data shows.
And I want to be very clear, I'm not attacking, I mean, there's so much love that goes into the district, but when you look, I mean, there's still an issue. And so it's a both and conversation. And I want to be very clear about that there's great stuff.
It's an issue that is so
Microphone.
community-wide.
Well, I agree. I'm not placing any blame, but it's still an issue.
Yeah, well, it is.
Thank you, Member Trinka. I've been saying that for 17 years. This number, especially for these groups, have been abysmally low. And that's not trying to take away any heart or soul that has been poured into each and every child that comes through our doors. I understand your plea, and I make the same plea that there's systems in place that are doing this, and we haven't figured out what system that is yet, and we need to figure it out. That's what it is, and I don't know how. And I think if we can figure it out, we'd be thrilled and be leaders in that. But this is a problem all over, but I don't care about all over. I care about right here.
And I'll let Member Sandstead come in and share.
I think that part of the problem that creates this long-standing inability to solve this is the fact that we don't give voice to it. And so I also want to thank Member Trinka for saying it, because we see these numbers and we are just in shock. And sometimes we don't even express them verbally, and we should. That currently the achievement gap, or students who are able to read at Denfeld, are, the range is 13.6% for African American students, 14% for special ed students, 33% for students who receive free and reduced lunch. Just giving voice to that and not letting it disappear today and not come back to us for a year, to check in on that and see what we're doing and to really hear about it. And there are a lot of efforts that are in place, and I want to hear more about how they're actually working and the data behind them in a more solid way.
And I'll just come back and say that, again, my vision, my voice, my experience says that we need to be alarmed. Don't take my. I know I'm being defensive because this is my career. Your career is in law, and I think if we were to hold you, and say, why is that happening in the court system? And if Member Oswald thinks that this has been going on for 17 years, I'd have to say that's not true. We didn't have the data collection for us to even understand what the percentages were necessarily, nor was our community of diversity that significant 17 years ago. But we still continue to work every day and bring in programs. And I don't think that the percentages, I would like a lesson in data reading and percentage reading, because I think we look at the percentages and we think that that's a large group. And when you look at how many students are in each reporting area, and then the percentage of that, I don't want to say anybody is not significant, but if you knew the and you asked for that, member Trinka, 8 slides ago, that if you're going to show us percentages, maybe we also need, to understand what those percentages actually mean in students and in success and in growth. But, they want to report to the board because we've asked for it, and we want these percentages so we know. But when you're in the buildings day in and day out, I think we make great progress with our students, and if the percentages just don't reflect it.
I think if you think this data didn't exist 17 years ago in this form, you're correct. But it still existed, and the people of color that it has affected have known about it for generations. So I encourage you to connect with some of them, including Mr. Mendoza that's sitting over there. He knows the history.
Superintendent Kranz.
I want to say that this is exactly the focus that we have had. The work that we've been doing has been really focused on addressing the achievement gap with our multi-tiered systems of support and our professional learning communities. At Denfeld specifically, bringing in the BAR program, the Check and Connect program, which this year the 10 students that have worked with the Check and Connect program, 9 of them graduated, and the 10th is on her way. So we are using research-based strategies with our specific students who need that support, and that is at the heart of the work that we are doing every day in the district. That is why we're focused on our primary strategies of multi-tiered systems of support, of professional learning communities to improve our instruction to reach those students, and our focus on culture and climate, because we know that plays a role in our classrooms and in our schools every day. And that is will continue to be our focus as we move forward. And as we're making sure that our schools have the supports that they need, bringing in the continuous improvement teams that are doing needs assessment in each of our schools specific to their community, and making sure that we're bringing in interventions to meet those specific needs for specific communities. And this really is the focus of everyone in the school district every day. And I see the numbers too, and that's why it's important that we're doing this.
Duluth East High School. So transitioning to Duluth East, they have an achievement gap goal, as well as they are looking to, in the area of reading, increase student achievement from 50 to 55% for Black African American students, and they're also focusing on American Indian and Native Alaska Native student groups, and they're looking to grow that from 50 to 55% in the area of math. For the graduation goal, they have chosen to go from 92.94 to 93.5%. In addition, they have a career and college readiness goal. And so for their, they're trying to increase strategies for college and career readiness for students at all levels and all categories, meaning all demographic groups. They're looking to increase participation in college and career readiness activities for free and reduced group students and protected class students, and provide additional opportunities and resources for students of poverty to access college and career readiness opportunities.
Can I ask a quick question there? Every year when we offer the ACT, it goes back and forth about whether or not students have to pay for it. In what year? Do we know what we're doing this year? Are we offering the ACT to all juniors, and do they have to pay? And if they have to pay, what's it going to cost?
We will be offering it because it is in statute that we offer it. Last year we offered it at a reduced rate. Dr. Lake, have we heard what's happening this year? could you join us, please?
So it is in statute that we offer it during the school day, so we will be doing that. For students who qualify for free or reduced price lunch, it is free. For those who do not, it's $50. If they pay online, it's $50 plus the $5 service fee, which is still cheaper than if they were to take it on a national day, which is $58. Mm-hmm.
The Alternative Learning Center and the AEO, they are also receiving comprehensive support from the Regional Centers of Excellence. One place that they were identified for was their 4-year graduation rate, so they have a 4-year graduation rate goal. Now, it becomes a little challenging, and you'll note that most ALCs across the state have been identified because most students who attend the ALC are not on track to graduate, which is a reason that they're there. So they're receiving, but they are receiving comprehensive support, so we welcome that, and to challenge ourselves to figure out how an ELC can work better to help achieve that goal. So they've committed to going from 30 to 35% this next school year, and also they have they want to increase their attendance rate. So that was an area that they identified as they have creative ways to do attendance and can do some really nice things for kids, and they're continuing to explore that. And ways that they can get more kids to school and help them be successful and get back on track to graduate. Our residential programs, again, a little bit different than our traditional sites in terms of how they're going to write a goal. So for them, they're focusing on students who are enrolled for 90 school days or more because they have students that do come and go. They've said that, students that are here for 90 days, we're going to focus on doing the STAR assessment, and we're going to try to, from pre to post test, we're going to try to improve them by a half a grade level during that time period. And that is in both reading and math, so it's the same approach for each.
I have a question. Thank you. Can somebody explain to me why AEO is lumped with ALC and accountability? I know they share staff, but it seems to me they're two separate programs, and so I get how AEO would help bring up ALC's graduation rates, but is there a rhyme or reason for that in accountability?
They are not connected in accountability.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure why they're lumped together for their goal.
I would say that I guess you could focus it more on ALC. For our AEO students, some students only take a course there, and they're going to, a lot of the times their assessments go back to the home site depending on what they are. So I guess maybe ALC would be a better focus for that.
Okay. And then for the residential programs, are they held to the same grade level accountability as their students, or how are they measured? They're fluctuating
for their goal. For their goal, that's different. Are you talking about statewide assessments, or are you talking about?
I'm talking about in ESSA. Each residential program is a different place, and so are they all identified, or are they not part of the identification system? And they aren't in our district numbers either?
Perhaps Dr. Lick could come back up. I do not believe that they are in our district numbers as a whole.
They count just like any other school in terms of accountability. What else was the question I missed?
I had the question of, are those students within those schools held to the same grade level standards, being that they come to us usually traumatized and behind and all those things? Yeah. Not from here.
Got it. Regardless of where they start, they're required to take the grade level test based on the grade level standards that they are currently enrolled in. So if they're a third grade student and a non-reader, they're still expected to take the third grade exam for accountability purposes. Yeah.
I
All right. So those are the goals for each of our sites. And I know you've had a chance to ask questions throughout, but are there additional questions that you would like to ask about the entire process or any other follow-up questions?
Is there any opportunity to measure these goals prior to the end of the school year along the way to see if progress is being made?
Yes, to some. It depends. Some of them are MCA based, and so we don't currently have a measure for that we could use as kind of an in-between. I think at one time we did some things with that, but we don't have those in place right now. At our secondary sites, we do have the FAST system at our elementary, and so we can collect data through that. In terms of some of the other goals like suspensions and whatnot, we can run regular reports on that and take a look at that.
I would like to see, if everybody's in agreement on this, I would like us to see sort of a January or February check-in on the attendance and anything else that's easily checked in on, and then whenever we get MCAs back to revisit this and see how the goals, see if we achieved our goals.
Yeah.
In, July, whenever that's going to be.
I don't think we'll be able to share any MCA data before then. I mean, because it'll be embargoed, so we wouldn't be able to probably till August next school year, September.
Superintendent Kronstadt?
Yeah, I was going to say that it's August that those come out. Underneath these goals, they have benchmarks as well, but this is really what our PLCs and our multi-tiered systems of support are all about, is making sure that students are making progress along the way and looking at what standards are we teaching right now and where are students on this standard right here and now, so that it really was the case years ago where we would teach all year and then give the test and not be doing those check-ins. And so our new system is about making sure that kids are keeping up as we're moving. So the MCAs, while they are the measurement that the state is using internally for formal or informal assessments, are really what is making the difference on a daily basis as for the progress of our students and how we're changing our instruction on the move to make sure that students are getting what they need as we move along. So I just wanted to bring a focus to that the MCAs are one measurement on one day. And there's many other tools that our teachers are using to monitor progress as we go along.
Any other questions of our North Star report? I think all of us on the board are interested in, more information. We want to see things, but yet I also then caution about wanting to see where we're at in these goal setting too soon for some of the initiatives that they've got going on. And attendance has been a focus for a few years, so maybe we could, take a look at attendance at the levels. I know middle school and high school seem to be our focus tonight, but that also is that's been a long-term goal, and there's lots of facets in there too. So I would like some information check back maybe in February or March, but I also don't know. I mean, I don't know if we're going to make a recommendation for it on Tuesday night and see, but I also know that asking for it too soon only sets us up to be not disappointed, but like anxious, like there's something didn't happen, when in actuality it is happening, just we're asking for a report sooner than what they can do. I don't know. Is this the appropriate time to ask whether or not I think we have been interested in a report from our continuous improvement teams. Is this kind of it? Okay. And these slides were put together by the continuous improvement teams at our sites. The goals and, the teams decided what they wanted to do and fed that back to you for this report?
Yep, each of them has a templated document that they use, and it has the different goal areas they identified earlier. And then they pick and choose based on their data. Dr. Lee does, like I said, she does a lot of work to get them the data, to help them break it down, even meets with some of the teams, and then they go through that and identify their goals. And so they do go through that process. They take a look at all their initiatives and their strategies, and they outline all those different pieces and work it down to what is that root cause, and then develop goals based around that and what they want to accomplish. So every document is probably 10 to 20 pages long that gets shared with me. So they put a lot of time and effort into that. So this is just a brief overview of each to give you a sense of when all their work comes down, and after all the work gets done and they set their goals, this is what they're saying we need to focus on after their data digs.
Yep, just a couple comments. Thank you for a very lengthy presentation and answering many questions for us. I know I've been sitting thinking about one piece of homework I'm going to do myself is to go back to the presentations that were done last year, school by school, where they were setting goals and working with their team and just kind of relooking that to think about the focuses that they were making at that time. And I'm going to make a commitment to really go through that and kind of compare it to what you presented with us today as well. So I appreciate that. And then the other comment around the attendance piece is, I know we've had a couple presentations over the last couple years when we've really made a focus, and statewide actually, we made a focus on attendance. And I guess I would again recommend that in the next couple months we have a focus at the Education Committee just to give people more of an overview. I certainly, as a high school parent, know how attendance works and had some issues with it last week with my own child. But I think just to help everyone understand kind of better how we do track attendance, what is put on parents to be responsible to call in for their kids and things like that, and then maybe bring in the truancy kind of just piece of it, check and connect, all the different things that we're doing to kind of focus. So maybe kind of an overview around attendance and our policies at some point. Yeah.
And I do think that we can do some, if the board does ask for some data check-ins around the data that we do have, I think we can definitely do that. I know we had some conversations about data, and we had a couple staff members come and present about data at our principals meeting recently and teach them how we found some areas where we can clean up some things. There's just even little things like you add a period or you hit enter and it throws things off really weird. So we were able to do that, and we're actually going to practice this at our next principal meeting. We'll be running reports and make sure that we're cleansing and scrubbing that data. So the information that we get to you is going to look really nice. So we're in work on that. And so some of that stuff we're going to be doing monthly reports on with our leadership team. And so we could do some check-ins throughout if the board does want to see that. On the, like, again, I won't have the MCA data, but some of those different areas we can take a look at for sure. And attendance is an ongoing, that's ongoing. It's always we're always trying to go back and clean those different pieces up as a student's not there, and if there was no note received, we're following up, we're asking questions, and it comes in different, at different rates and in different waves. So that one's a little bit harder to do because it's communication between the parents and the school, and sometimes if we're not getting information, then it sits out as unexcused, for example, when maybe it wasn't excused, and it's a process.
I think as kindergarten readiness is one of these fundamental goals too, I think it'd be very interesting to see this year how many of our students came in prepared and talk about what we're going to do moving forward to ensure that number goes up.
Seeing no further questions, thank you, Mrs.
Yep, thank you.
We just have on our agenda that will move to accept on Tuesday is grant applications. We have a Miller-Dwan grant application submitted by Ron Lake, Tanya Sconyers, and Danette Sebo for implementation of the Sources of Strength program. We have a Northland Foundation Youth and Philanthropy grant that would go towards Ordine East Middle School's first robotic tech challenge. We have a grant from Boston Scientific from Kelvin Harris at Laura MacArthur for robotics. We have the Northland Foundation, again, for robotics at Laura MacArthur. Our action items are acceptance of grants from a variety, Northland Foundation and Boston Scientific. We have a trip request, an extended trip request. Do we have to go through that at all? It's in your packet to look through with all of the different qualifications from the Minnesota State High School League. It's already done. We're just accepting it. The first one is the Montgomery, Alabama. The second extensive one is the skiing sponsored trip to West Yellowstone. We also have that. We have, what? That's coming up. Yes. And we have 3 diplomas to approve, and that would be our education report on next Tuesday. Any questions? Clarifications? See you tomorrow.